Hello and welcome to another episode from CBD Genie. My name is Matt,
And I'm Jonathan.
and today we have an interview with Rowan at Infinity.
Yeah. We had an opportunity to catch up with Rowan, learn more about their brand and the products and where they see the whole CBD market going.
So stay tuned, and here we go.
Hi, Rowan. Okay, it's lovely to have you here. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. How are you guys?
Not too bad.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
sort of thought we'd catch up and have a bit of a chat and get a feel for Infinity. So we'll
good.
just dive straight in with that one and pick your brains on this. And perhaps you can tell us how and why you started Infinity.
So probably going back to 2017, 2018, I started becoming aware of CBD, you know, being an option in terms of kind of wellness and an alternative to kind of other prescriptions and stuff that people have been using. Me personally, have a few kind of underlying issues that in the past I've hit walls, so to speak, kind of down the traditional routes with doctors, where I've kind of backed off of prescriptions due to side effects, addiction, and kind of other issues.
Yeah.
So I kind of just decided, I was quite young, late 20s, deciding I don't want to be in that point yet. And I had previously been aware that, going to university and stuff, there'd been times where I'd tried cannabis and I'd gone, hang on, suddenly these things are being helped. But obviously, that's not something that's sustainable. Working as a professional growing up, it's just not something that I wanted to be able to be part of my life. So I've just kind of been going through. So when I heard about CBD, I kind of thought it was a bit too good to be true, but I was at the point of desperation I think a lot of people get to. I thought I'd give it a go, and spent about a year trialing different things. And it's not something that overnight changed my life, but it suddenly gave me a little bit more control. But the problem was I had no consistency of getting hold of it or trusting the prices and the supply chains. So an opportunity came through where we thought, this clearly should be a demand for this. We had the ability to set up like a temporary shop within another shop to see if there was a market for it. I think that was the end of 2018. And within 2 months, we could tell straight away there's definitely a demand for this. We live in the middle of nowhere in southwest Wales, so if it's booming down here, then clearly there's something to this, and kind of went from there. But we still had the same issues, which was that at the time the CBD industry seemed to be booming, but it was all over the place with compliance, what was being imported, lab tests. So prices were through the roof. Our most popular drops at the time were about £200 a bottle. And that's obviously very expensive for someone who potentially is, on benefits or, for most people to have to buy one or two of those a month is a huge expense. So,
Well, I was just wondering what sort of when you first launched, what sort of demographic was it that you started to attract?
So we expected to attract a lot more of the younger recreational side of the market, which certainly happened. But actually, off the bat, it was normally middle-aged and up people who had gone through, they were waiting on their rheumatology appointment on a 3-year waiting list. There was someone who had heard something related to in a support group that they go to for arthritis, just again, grasping at straws. So we'd say that it was heavily, women at first as well, 50s up was pretty much our demographic off the bat.
Would you say there was would you feel there was a sort of a sense of desperation from people for looking for a solution that they weren't getting in the traditional way from doctors, the NHS, etc.?
Absolutely. It's something that I can relate to, and it's a very common story that you hear is that, and it comes from different angles. You've got a lot of people who are frustrated at GPs or the hospital system or the NHS, and I don't think it's necessarily fair. I think, it's a very complex issue, the human body, and a lot of people are finding themselves more than ever having issues to do with chronic pain, anxieties, mental health, and stuff like that. And ultimately, there are solutions, but the data is out on opiates. It's not something that everyone wants to take on board, and many people are coming in having been on them for 10 years and having to come off of it because now they've got liver problems or they've got other issues. So desperation is certainly the key word there. And I think, why wouldn't you give it a go? And certainly at the first, there was still a lot of, there was a gap between the customers, CBD and cannabis. So you even have customers coming in and going, I've heard CBDs could help me. I'm all in. I'll try anything. Tell me about it. So I'll start off going, right, well, CBD is extracted from cannabis. Their face goes blank and they walk out the shop. So it's there was definitely this point of desperation, but I think it gets to the point with a lot of people where they're willing to try anything but the understanding of what CBD wasn't necessarily there.
Have you noticed over the last few years that that scenario of somebody blanking CBD because of their preconception of it being associated with cannabis, has that softened? Are you finding now people are being much more receptive to CBD and its origin? Is that why do you think that might be? Is it do you feel people are becoming more educated?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Education. I think at first a lot of people came in hearing CBD but didn't actually know what it was. But now you're getting people coming in not because they've heard of it on the grapevine, but because their auntie or their nan or their cousin or their friend has said, you need to try this. And that's what it comes to, is that before, if they didn't know the link with cannabis, they just have this association from vague, misunderstandings perhaps. Whereas now, when you've got someone that you respect saying, yeah, it's from cannabis, you should try it. It definitely works. Look at America, look at these other kind of models. The UK is trying to catch up. We've noticed a huge difference. But what's funny is now stepping into the medical cannabis side of the industry more, it's almost like a second wave of that, where you've had a load of people that are now completely okay with cannabis within CBD. But now they're hearing about the THC side. It's gone back a little bit. So I think it comes down to education and understanding. And I think the industry has a lot to say for spreading that information, but the industry also has a lot to say in terms of making it a lot harder to understand for customers who don't understand it yet, because there's too many keywords being thrown at them, and regulation's very hard to understand even when you're in the industry, let alone on the outside.
Right.
So in terms of where you're at in terms of the products you've developed, what did you sort of start with, and what does your product portfolio look like now?
So it's definitely changed a little bit since we launched. We first launched our products at the Infinity CBD Expo at the beginning of 2019. We'd spent a few months prior being invited to talks for a fibromyalgia support group as well as an arthritis one. So at that point, we didn't have any of our own products. We were still importing or wholesaling. We kind of used that as an opportunity to be like, okay, what works for you guys? What kind of are the core products? From that feedback and working to develop our products with them, our main kind of core were the drops, which every brand has drops, right? It's probably the most effective and popular method for delivery. But then certain topicals as well, things that can be applied locally, and more importantly, that don't have a load of other stuff in it as well. Especially with fibromyalgia, with the support group we worked with, a lot of people have other sensitivities that can be flared up, right? So if they're having a balm with CBD in it, but it might have a type of essential oil that they don't get on with, or other preservatives that makes their skin dry out, we just wanted to kind of strip it all back and say, okay, we're not a huge multi-conglomerate that can keep products on a shelf for 5 years, but we can do that, have a shelf life of 1 year if we focus on natural ingredients to kind of reduce the sensitivity issues, just to be more effective. So our product line from the beginning primarily was drops of a wide range of strengths for everyone to kind of, because everyone's different. And then kind of massage oils and muscle salves, and we've got a product called Nature's Balm that's just pretty much as stripped back as you can be without it being nothing in the jar, in the sense that it's just coconut oil, CBD, vitamin E to help it absorb, and that's it. So that's kind of our core product lineup. And then since then we've expanded into other areas because we realized there's a lot more people who are after lower doses, not necessarily every single day, but use it maybe before their yoga class on a Saturday or when they're having a particularly tough day. So we introduce other products like chocolate and kind of stuff like the roll-on calm sticks, which is, you can take a couple of squares as and when you need it, or roll it on when you need it. And that's been the core of of what we've done. And that's helped us kind of spread, especially on the massage oil side, because now we have massage therapists and spas using our oils on their clients, and it kind of spreads from there.
Exactly. And in terms of looking ahead now, have you got any areas of development that you're looking at in terms of product? Anything that's on the horizon for you that you can talk about?
I'm very excited.
Breaking news.
Just to be, it's just kind of we're in a point where we've had a couple of years through COVID, but also through the novel foods process. And seeing as we're a very small team, just from keeping up with compliance, trying to make sure with every role with the FSA, all of our attention's kind of been just keeping the show on the road, especially juggling loads of people being off more with COVID and distancing. So we haven't had much of the product development side of things that we've wanted to do throughout all this time. Whereas now we're kind of coming out of all of that and everything's shored up. We're certainly going to be focusing on more products. But for us, food-wise, obviously with novel food, we're not going to be releasing any more kind of edibles. But I think we're kind of all covered on that. What we're more going to be focused on is the products that we find people in the support groups that we work with have been able to use more frequently, but trying to make it much cheaper for them to access. That's kind of been like a big part of our ethos from the beginning. Is, like I said, we had £200 bottles, whereas the equivalent we sell now is $49.99. We're trying to make that as accessible as possible. So looking at things that really help, and last a while. So we're going into stuff like bath soaps that are a bit more targeted, but really trying to keep that price down under the $9.99, maybe even £5 mark for different strengths. But actually just going back to the education is bundling the products, the core products that we sell in a way that's more accessible to new people, but actually comes with stuff such as the book you guys are talking about releasing in it. Just because I think that's the biggest change we've seen is when you're supplying the information to back up the product, this customer really sticks with it. They understand how to use it, and that consistency really makes a difference between someone trying it and failing and trying and going, I see how to use this. CBD for me isn't the same as popping a strong painkiller and within an hour you're like, oh wow, that's kicked in. It's more of something that you're trying to use to mitigate other issues and find more of a balance. So supporting that with our products is kind of where we're coming from now. And as my background is media, we're going to be releasing more short form kind of relaxation and wellness based media. So if you've got people who are sat at their desk all day and want to be able to take 5 minutes at lunch, we're going to be doing immersive kind of soundscape stuff. Living along Pembrokeshire, we can easily kind of immerse people in the coastline, out at sea, on the mountaintops or whatever, and just have immersive soundscapes for when they take the CBD at lunch, or perhaps when they're using the medical vape device. And stuff like that. So we're kind of stepping out of just the core products that you're buying, but kind of the support of those products, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think we've seen a number of people in the CBD space, trying to look at CBD not just as this very sort of narrow channel, single sort of product solution, but actually, like you say, give it some context, and that might be with other complementary things that go into the CBD, or like you've suggested, the whole environment in which you're taking it is really
Absolutely.
interesting.
I think it was the second expo back in 2019. We developed it was a bit out there. We developed a virtual reality kind of experience. So when you came to our stand, you could sit on a mountaintop, and someone would talk you through breathing exercises whilst you applied our calm stick. And the idea being is someone can come up to us and try a calm stick, roll on in pressure, or to try drops and walk off, and then they're down the road talking to another exhibitor and they don't know what's helped. Whereas that 5 minutes sat on a mountaintop with breathing along with someone, you're really noticing that moment when the CBD is setting on. You're really smelling that lavender or the peppermint or whatever else is going on with the treatment you've taken. And then everyone coming out of that was just a bit, just in that 5 minute window, there's such a significant difference. So, as you say, I think helping people understand how to use CBD is the key, and things like that are really effective from what we've seen.
It's interesting. One of the questions we always ask people is how they feel their particular brand sets themselves apart from others, and that's a curious one that you're talking about there, because you're sort of suggesting taking the CBD within the environment you're in is complementary and something to consider. Not everyone sort of goes down that road.
No, certainly not. But I think there's definitely different approaches, and I'm not saying that ours is the way to always do it, but it's certainly, we spend a lot of time one-on-one with customers. Having this added layers to it definitely seems to be a good way to convert and help understand.
Yeah. And not, obviously you're taking, like you say, fairly bold sort of steps forward from this. And what things do you see sort of happening really within the sort of CBD marketplace, say over the next 12 months or so? How do you see it changing or evolving?
So I think we're kind of in a weird space at the moment where we're semi post novel food, which kind of put a mute on the industry almost, because no one knew if they were going to get on the list or not. Whereas at the moment, people such as ourselves are on the list, but still awaiting evidence or whatever the classification is. And that can be a bit misleading for consumers, because obviously they have all our evidence. That's no problem. It's actually the additional steps.
Yeah.
So I think that is going to be a huge change. The kind of word on the grapevine as it stands, which will definitely change by the new year, is that earlier in the new year is when we're going to start seeing a lot of these start cascading through. And that peace of mind should really translate. But furthermore, that's probably when you're going to start seeing the bigger players releasing their budgets to start marketing this properly, because you're going to start seeing ad agencies, or potentially, hopefully, Facebook, Instagram opening up a little bit more, because there is a regulatory body to market within. As much as for many people from the business side, could be concerning, because you're thinking, well, now we're going to have competitors flying in with millions to spend on ad spend. I would see it the other way around, which is what we already touched on, is actually that's a lot of people spending a lot of money to educate people in the UK about CBD. And, I can just hope that people find the product that works for them, whether it's ours or not. But overall, I think that's hopefully where we see things in the next 12 months. But interestingly, we're also at a point where there's a big surge in medical cannabis being legally prescribed in the UK. Yeah. And I've been a patient for just under 2 years, but in the last 12 months alone, you can see online presence skyrocketing. You can see more and more people becoming aware of it. And that's a good and a bad thing, but it's starting conversations that need to be had. I think a statistic came out this week that a third of police still aren't aware that it's legal to have that in the UK. So obviously there's still a lot going on with people getting caught out, being arrested, having stuff confiscated, and being retroactively corrected. But whilst you've also got places like Legoland having to come out with statements and say, you can use your medical cannabis in this part of Legoland when you visit, or, and all these kinds of things. So this is a really weird, it's a really weird place where there's a lot to work out, and it's constantly developing, just like the CBD side. But again, the more this conversation is happening, the more people are aware of it because they're smelling it or seeing it out and about. This is the change in the next 12 months. I think we're going to see is just a much broader idea of what's going on from the public that don't have a clue. And I think when you're in this industry or familiar with it, it's very easy to take for granted that actually most people still don't have a clue about it. So I think hopefully this transition will be.
You've hit on something that's very true. We're finding that when you, it's not that you know what you don't know what you don't know. It's that old thing, isn't it? It's you assume. We immerse ourselves talking to people, looking at people, and what's going with CBD, but you kind of sort of brainwash yourself that the whole country knows all about it, and it's like, why wouldn't you? And then you realise most people don't. No. We're just scratching the surface at the moment. So you need to be aware of that. But I am curious as to whether or not you're going to start thinking about a CBD theme park, and whether or not you might consider going into the gaming market.
Well, funny you should say that. No, we've been in talks with a few partners in the past, rather than a theme park, but actually making retreats. It's something that we're exploring at the moment. Yeah. I think it's a bigger version of the sitting down with a meditation guide for 5 minutes with VR. Is if you're in a situation where you're surrounded by nature, perhaps you've got someone you're staying there for 2 nights, people are cooking for you, take your feet off. Every evening is a massage, every morning is a yoga class, and throughout it you're kind of being introduced, say, to CBD and kind of the opportunities that it provides for people. It's an opportunity for the customers to not just immerse themselves, but also really flesh it out with the questions and kind of find out what it works for them. And it's something we've been asked for, all the years we've been open now. It's just not something we've ever pushed forward with. But I think it's something that's going to definitely, mark my words, within the next 5 years, it'll be commonplace to be seeing similar kind of things pop up.
You'll also probably find it eats into or gets into the sort of business framework as well, where companies are looking to help their workforce through issues, and the company might then lay on, such as yourself, people like yourself coming in and talking to 50 people and maybe sort of having sessions involving CBD within the workplace to sort of see if it, I don't know, mellows work anxiety.
Well, this again is, funnily enough, it's a really difficult subject at the moment because, well, I mean, take a step back. We've had a lot of people, where we are. There's a few big oil refineries, a lot of people on site, and they get drug tested regularly. And they're coming in saying, well, will this come up on a drug test if I get tested, right? And again, it's a difficult place for us to kind of talk through because we can't say yes or no because we don't know what they're doing when they step out the door. They could go and do a bong around the corner and then blame us that this come up on a drug test. But having said that, we've, as a result, ended up doing talks at places and working with people locally who are in the managerial positions where they're overseeing these things. And there's no black and white approach to it, but I think you're right. That's what needs to happen. It's not just retreats, but also education for employers to understand. Actually, within the next few years, you're likely to have someone on staff that is prescribed cannabis now. What's your risk assessment for that? And I've seen dozens now of cases where people have been signed off work for over a year whilst HR panic and try and work this out, and they're on prescription cannabis perhaps for anxiety, and they don't know if they got a job to go back to. And every round that they're getting through, and it's no fault of the HR or whoever's dealing with it, is actually quite a clean case of discrimination, simply because they don't understand actually what the laws are like, and because there is pre-existing notions about what it is. Yeah. And it shouldn't be seen any differently than if someone's prescribed, say, tramadol or whatever else. But of course it is. So I think education around, or accessibility for consultants, people who kind of know from inside the industry to help employees is vital. And again, will probably in the next 12 months be a big change in how things go. So
it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, like I say, it's exciting times ahead. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely exciting times ahead. Yeah. It's good to be kind of on the frontier of it, but it's also terrifying and very stressful. So.
No, well, that's great. Well, we'll certainly be keeping in touch with you. But I mean, for now, thanks so much for your time. Really interesting to talk, and we'll no doubt be coming back to you again in a few months to get an update on everything.
Brilliant. No, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.